Warhammer 40k Darktide was first revealed back in July 2020 with the release of a minute-long cinematic teaser, which set the grim tone of the game along with revealing its name and a planned 2021 release window. We learned that Darktide was being developed by Fatshark, the team behind the Vermintide series, which are fairly popular and well-regarded melee-focused co-op action games. Now, Darktide would be taking that basic formula and moving it into the 40k universe with a brand new setting, new characters, more metal, and a whole lot more guns. You'll be teaming up with 3 other players and setting out into the hive city of Tertium with a variety of melee and ranged weapons that you'll use to fight back hordes of enemies in the name of the Inquisition. Now, those were the basics and just about everything that we knew during the initial announcement, and well, 2021 has of course come and gone, but while the game still hasn't been released, we have got a fair amount of new information and details since that original announcement. There have been a few more trailers, some interviews, and other updates giving us a lot more clarity on what to expect. It seems like Darktide aims to be a whole lot more than just Vermintide with guns, although I would have been plenty happy if it was just that as well, because Vermintide was pretty darn cool, and I'm really excited for Darktide, and I want to dive into all of the stuff that we know about the game. We've kind of fleshed out a lot more of the setting and the basic structure of the game. We know that Darktide will be taking place on Adama Prime, specifically on Tertium, a hive city roughly the size of a continent. These places are massive, not only in like how far-reaching they are, but also in their depths. They've got structures tunneling miles beneath the planet, all sorts of different locations, and millions of inhabitants. It's just really cool setting for a game, and the location is very important to the main faction that we'll be dealing with, which is the Inquisition. This is a vital imperial holding. It is a capital to the region and home to billions, I'm sorry, I said millions, home to billions of loyal imperial citizens, they say. The problem, though, is that a cult known as the Admonition, with their army of poxwalkers, have begun wreaking havoc in an attempt to seize control of the city. Now, the Inquisition have called upon you and your allies to prevent this from happening. So the general narrative of Darktide is going to be focusing on the human side of the 40k universe. In fact, the primary writer for the game, Dan Abnett, is known for his Eisenhorn and Gaunt's Ghost book series, which also focus on the human perspective, but they say it's a lot more than just like what the humans experience and think. In an interview, Fatshark has said that they want the feeling of vulnerability of a human to work into how the game plays as well. They're going to try to ensure that we have a lot of moments where we are just outgunned and outnumbered and having to rely on our other team members in order to survive. They say that we're going to be starting things out as a prisoner and will then be recruited by the Inquisition to fight back this invasion, essentially. And our goal is to try to gain their trust, which we'll do by going out on missions and completing tasks. So there's going to be a hub space, which is similar to what they did in Vermintide, with a mission board that has a variety of goals and objectives for us to fulfill. We will pick a quest, load into a mission, try to survive and complete our tasks as a team, and then if we do so successfully, we get to go back to the hub world and turn them in, rinse and repeat, trying to build up more trust, unlocking more things for us to do. Basically, this just sounds like a pretty simple like reputation grind, essentially. We'll be doing things for the Inquisition, gaining their trust, building our reputation, and unlocking stuff, presumably unlocking things like equipment and weapons, as well as various features, possibly even game modes, as we continue to progress through the game. Fatshark has said, though, that the hub isn't just going to be a place to pick up and turn in quests. There are going to be various other NPCs filling up the environment in order to flesh out the world and the story, because we'll be able to talk with them and learn a little bit about their backstory or maybe things that they want done, problems they're currently having, but also other players. And no, we're not just talking about the members of your party. They have said that the hub world in Darktide is much larger than what was seen in Vermintide 2, and there are going to be a lot more features and a lot more other players. So this is basically hinting at the fact that this might be some sort of, I don't know, think of something like Destiny 2 when it comes to this dynamic loading in of other players. You might just see a bunch of other people walking around, basically. And I think this is really exciting, especially given the setting. A hub location set in a place like Tertium has a lot of potential. There's a lot that they could really do with just how diverse the different locations could be, and all the different, you could have all these different hallways and underground areas and high rises and all sorts of stuff. They could really flesh out a very, very interesting hub space to play around in, and I really, really hope they do. Now let's go on to talk a bit about the gameplay. So on Darktide's Steam page, they describe the game's combat as being built on the legacy of Vermintide 2's highly praised melee combat. Warhammer 40k Darktide will introduce a deep and balanced gunplay to the mix, where we master the balance between ranged and melee combat as you fight through a slew of enemies, feeling the impact of each swing of your chainsword or blazing gunfire of your lasgun. Now, from the gameplay trailer that they released this year, we did get to see some of this in action. They open up with the first half of the trailer consisting of mostly melee combat, very familiar to me as someone who's played a lot of Vermintide, and then about halfway through, they switch to primarily ranged. Now, it's really hard to judge just from a trailer, but to my eye, everything looked really good, and like quite an improvement over even their past games, which again, I can't state it enough, like they make good melee combat action games. It really helps that I've played quite a bit of their prior Vermintide titles because I'm fairly familiar with the style of combat they deliver, and this leaves me pretty confident that they will at least make the melee feel great, and I'm super hopeful that they can nail the range as well. There was actually a surprising amount of ranged in Vermintide with things like bows, magic stabs, and yes, they even had like standard guns in those games, but it was far from the focus. Melee was always the focus, but it looks like in Darktide, they're basically flipping that on its head, and I'm very excited to see kind of what they've learned and improved upon from their prior games. I'm very, very hopeful. And yeah, just from the trailers, it looks pretty good. The animations, the reactions from the enemies being hit, everything about it looks pretty solid. I'm hoping it plays and feels good as well. Now, there are bound to be plenty of in-game secrets and side objectives, like beyond whatever your main tasks are, you know, so you're going to pick up a quest in the main hub, you're going to load into that quest, you're going to go out and fulfill your objective, right? But Vermintide had a lot of side objectives, and it's very likely that Darktide is going to do that as well. You have your main quest that you're doing, but there's almost certainly going to be various spots within the environment that you can interact with that will open up hidden paths or begin these special events depending on the map and depending on circumstances that you might fulfill. This was just such a huge thing in Vermintide. It was one of those things that as I continue to learn the different maps and all of the little secrets in them and all the different side objectives and events as well, very, very strong point of those games, and I would be shocked if that didn't return and hopefully even get improved upon in Darktide. And then also enemy variety, that is likely to be huge as well. Like with Vermintide, they had a lot to pull from with the Warhammer series. With the 40k series, there is a lot to pull from as well. We know at the very least that the base enemies are going to be these poxwalkers. These are kind of like these shambling zombies, the fodder enemies they are going to be fighting through the hordes of. There will almost certainly be a huge variety of these medium and larger tiers enemies. We've seen glimpses of some of the larger, more imposing creatures we're going to be facing off against in pretty much every one of the trailers that they've shown so far. So I'm really excited as they show more of this and give us a better idea of what we can expect. And going back again to the Vermintide games, because we can't help but touch on these when it comes to talking about Darktide, those had a huge focus on loot and progression. So that is likely to carry over into Darktide with us farming for better weapons and gears, leveling up our character, getting stronger and unlocking skills, progressing through different skill trees. In fact, they actually touched on some of this when they were discussing how character progression was going to work in interviews and even on their Steam page, which, speaking of which, let's talk about the playable characters. From the various trailers, we've gotten a good look at what are the 4 playable characters that we'll have access to. There was a religious acolyte wielding a power hammer and scroll, a masked Imperial Guard trooper with a lasgun, an Ogren with a big slug gun and cutlass, and then an Imperial Guard soldier with a power sword. Now, based on the weapons that we've seen them using and like their general appearance, we can probably make some guesses about what their playstyles will be, but we don't know any specifics. We don't know their exact names and backstories, which they will certainly have them. In the Vermintide games, each of the characters were very, very distinct. They weren't nameless, faceless, playable characters. They had their own history and and lore, and that is certainly going to be the case here as well. But we still don't know exactly what not only their names are, but their playstyles and abilities. But we at least have seen these 4 playable creatures, and assuming that they follow the Vermintide formula, we can expect they will each have distinct strengths and weaknesses that all play into the team setting. And that's really the thing. This is not going to be a solo kind of game if we're judging it based on Vermintide titles. You are meant to kind of be part of a team and working together in order to succeed. You're going to rely on each other. You're going to have your own strengths. There'll be things that you're amazing at, and your team's going to be like, wow, I can't believe you got us out of that situation. But there are also going to be things that you suck at, and you're going to need your teammates to help. And you know, as I touched on earlier, Fatshark themselves have said they're focusing on the human story that is also taking into account like the vulnerability of individual humans and the reliance on working together. So almost certainly this is going to be a game best played with other people, be it your friends or playing with other people that you matchmake into in order to get the kind of the full experience. Now, Fatshark also touched a bit on customization. They said that each class will have plenty of customization for their skill sets and loadouts, which can be tailored to fit whatever your playstyle is. So not only the characters themselves have their own strengths and weaknesses, but you can further customize it depending on what specific style of play you enjoy. You'll also be able to upgrade your gear and customize your character's visual appearance, they've said. And Darktide's creative director also touched on the fact that in Vermintide, they saw that players enjoyed tweaking their loadouts, and they are looking to work with a system that has that immediately put into Darktide. So they're gonna have a lot of different customization options right from the get-go without the reliance on mods and modders. Now, there have also been some hints at other playable characters beyond those base 4 that we discussed, although nothing has officially really been revealed. Some of the concept art teases at some other potential characters. And again, judging off of Vermintide, it is a 4-player co-op game, but there were 5 playable characters. If 3 people have already locked in a character, the last 4th person at least has 2 different options instead of just being stuck with 1 character. So I'm actually hopeful that they, again, with this idea of them evolving and learning and growing their formula, I hope we get more than 5. I hope we get 6 or 7 or 8 playable characters. I think that'd be really cool if they had a lot more variety and options. All right, so everything sounds great. When are we going to get to play this game? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it was originally set to release in 2021, but then last July, they did announce a delay that the game wouldn't be coming until spring 2022. Well, not too long ago, they came out again and announced another delay. To quote them here, they said, "It is paramount that we deliver the best 4-player co-op experience possible. That's why we've decided to extend production time on Warhammer 40k Darktide from its previously slated spring 2022 release to September 13th, 2022. So it's no longer coming out in the spring. It will be coming out in September. I am glad to see that they actually have set a date now. They're not going from spring 2022 to fall 2022. I think them actually setting a firm date makes me a little more confident that we are going to be getting a release then. It's not going to get a 3rd delay. Now, they also said that we can expect more news and information about the game in the coming months, so we should stay tuned for that. And of course, the summertime is host to a handful of large events that may very likely be showcasing Darktide. For example, Summer Games Fest is the perfect opportunity for them to release more information, more gameplay, more trailers. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I've had a lot of fun with the Vermintide games, and I am really looking forward to seeing how Fatshark evolves that formula and brings it into the world of 40k. I'm a sucker for fantasy games, but I also like these gritty sci-fi space epics. I've always really appreciated 40k for that kind of experience that it can deliver. So I'm really hopeful. Darktide sounds great, and I'm super looking forward to seeing and learning more about the game. And I'll of course keep you guys posted, as with any games that I'm interested in. When more new information comes out, I'll probably make a video talking about it. So stay tuned for that. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.